Hey, it's Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It's July 9th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And you can see we had another up day today. We're just kind of working sideways here, but we may be going to push higher again. Um, we did relieve some of that oversold or overbought condition the last 2 or 3 trading days, but we took a good bit of that back again today. But we're still inside the bands. We're not trading outside of that at the moment, so we do have room to go higher if and prices can stay above that band longer than you would expect. You can see here we had a really crazy, really strong sell-off right here back in April, and we got way outside that band. So it can happen. So there's nothing that says the prices have to stay in that band, but generally when they get outside of it, it's not long before they correct. And you can see when we had this big bounce outside of it, we had a pretty good correction. We've been trading uphill since we made that bottom in April, and we continue to go higher when when everybody's saying the market's going to crash, no less. So it still could crash. Don't get me wrong, uh, but you usually can't listen to any of that stuff. Just follow the price action, and if it crashes, you'll see it on the chart. And don't listen to those people because most of them don't know what they're talking about. So they get it wrong more than they get it right. But you can see a strong upward day, and we had some really good movement on the 2000 tick chart. We had a big rally up, but there wasn't much opportunity to enter that. Then it was big rally down, and then it was sideways a little bit, and there just weren't a lot of opportunities to trade it today. So is with all the movement and with the strong rally and the fact that we closed much higher today, there's still wasn't much of an opportunity to trade it. So, but let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart and you'll see what I'm talking about, and we'll go through the trades. It won't take long today because there's not many trades. So let's flip over there. Okay, here's our chart, and you can see really we spent most of the day just kind of chopping sideways. We had that early rally that went into the opening, and then we sold off relatively strongly, probably about 75%, and then we went sideways a while before we finally rallied into the close, and we almost got back to the highs again. So we didn't quite get a measured move, which would have been up here, so we didn't quite make that. So we'll see. We could sell off now because a lot of times if you don't make a target like that and you miss it by a long shot, generally the prices are going to go further in the other direction. Not always. It's not 100%, but it happens quite often. So we'll see. We may correct and sell off again before we go higher, but we'll wait and see. In the end, it was another up day, but let's zoom in here. We'll go through the trades again. There's not a lot of them today, so this is not going to take long. But early on, this is a really strong trend. By the time it gets up here to this trend line, and you realize this is a really strong trend, this is a spike and channel up, you can just about enter on any good signal bar that comes back to the trend line. Now you only do this on really strong trends, and you can see this is a really strong trend. We didn't even hardly come back to the trend line. We stayed at the midline. And so that's telling you it's a strong trend. So you had a signal bar here, one here. This one was outside, but it's another possibility because there's not much of a break there. You might take that one. By the time you get up here, we're starting to, we've had a close outside a new high, so I wouldn't take those. You see eventually one fails here and it turns down. And we just turn lower. Now there is a lower high here, but I think that's moved too far. There's not much room to the lows there, and there's not really much room to the EMA, so I don't think you want to enter that trade. You do get a second entry long here, followed by a higher low. Now this one I didn't mark, but it's a possibility. It's a double bottom there. Notice you're working now, and you get a first entry, second entry, and then a higher low. The problem is we're expecting you might get a reversal here. So I'm not crazy about that, but you could at least argue for it to be green. And of course we turn down, we get 2 legs down, and you can see we confirmed that trend line pretty much right here, but there's still no setup for a short. Finally we run up, we get a close outside, and you actually get a close outside a new high all in one bar, but I would wait on a lower high because that's just a first entry. And you do get a lower high here, and that's a second entry short on a break below that, so I like taking that entry. And you probably don't get a runner unless you were carried a little extra risk there, but if you did catch that one, once it got going, you probably had a really nice runner there. Then there's no other chance to enter here, and then we get a close outside, move to a new high. We do get a second entry short there, but it's an engulfing bar. You got to wait for that to close, and it doesn't close properly, so no entry there. You might say, okay, there was an additional attempt to go higher, so 3 tries, but there's not enough room to get out before those lows. It ends up not mattering, but you don't know that in advance because you see how it tried to bounce there, and it could bounce there, so you have to skip that trade. And of course, you get a first entry, second entry, and so this was a third entry, but no setup on any of that. Then we're working down, close outside, and a new low, and you also get a first entry, second entry, because there's a new swing high right there. So that's a second entry long, and it's 2 legs down, and you do get a close outside and a new low, and it also makes a double bottom. So I like going long there. Doesn't turn out to be anything more than a nice scalp. You might get a couple points there on a runner if you tried to get one, but it ends up turning down. It confirms this trend line and turns down again. And that's just a first entry, first entry, first entry, and there's just no chance to enter there until finally you do have a secondary channel here, and you get a close outside, a couple of swings to a new low. It's tempting to go long there, but I'd wait on a higher low, and you still would want some room back to the EMA, and you actually get that here. So I like entering there. Runs up, you get a second entry here, but no setup. And then it turns back down up here on a double top, but again, no setup. You do get a lower high here, but it's not a tradable one. Prices have moved too far. You might say there's a failure here, but it's not really where you want it to set up at. It's not that kind of trade, so I don't think you want to take that trade. You might enter that one. It's another engulfing bar, so that's the real problem with it. You got to wait for it to close, and then you got to go short, and you've already had a close outside of this down channel and a new low, and so it's pretty dangerous, so I just skip that. But notice we run down here, we make a double bottom, we go a little lower, and then we actually make a higher low here. The only reason I marked this one green, we do have a close outside and a couple of swings to a new low, but it looks a little sideways there. Technically, I don't see the small bodied bar, but there are several bars working sideways, but my guess is you're going to have some shorts trapped here if this breaks higher, and sure enough, it takes off pretty quickly. And it runs up here, and notice you get a first entry, and there is a second entry there, but there's not room to get, there's some support there, and there's not room to get out. If you took it, it works. I didn't mark it. I didn't like it in real time, but you might argue for it to be green there. It is a lower high. It does have a 2-bar matching high, so you could take it. The problem is you just don't have much room to scalp out before that low. And it already looks like you got some sideways stuff going on here. And if you took it, you would have had to write all this out, but it ends up working. So you get a third entry long here. I think you need a higher low. You don't get it. Runs up, turns down. And again, you don't really get a setup here. This one's tempting, but it's not quite down to the lows. Actually, the lows probably would have been more down here at that point. I ended up moving them up to match the rest of this stuff across here. But I just don't think you want to enter there. So it ends up going back to the top and turning down again, no setup, and then it bounces again. You might argue that's a second entry, and you do have a trend down with a close outside and a new low. I wasn't that crazy about it at the time, but looking at it after the fact, I probably should have marked it. It is a second entry. Notice the new high there, first entry, second entry, and it's two legs down, and you do have a closeout side and a new low all in one bar. I think you're better off to wait on the higher low, which comes here, and you get a chance to enter there. There's even a higher low from there, but by that time it doesn't look like rejection. If you didn't enter here, I don't think you can enter here. It ends up going higher, but you're not getting rejection there like you did here and here and here, and you got to be careful with that. And you see it does come back before it goes higher, and then you actually get a second entry short. You actually get, notice you got a channel working up, you get a close outside, and you get two swings to a new high, and it turns down right at those highs again. And I think that's bearish enough, but it's close. There's a little stem there on the end, so I mark that one green. But it turns out to be a good trade. It runs down and it bounces, and again it bounces right off the support. Does this close in the upper 1/3? It's close. I marked the trade. I probably should have marked it green, but it's close to being blue. If you want to, I think you're fine going long there because you're probably going to go to the other side. And sure enough, it runs to the other side and turns down again. It does make a new higher high this time, so I think you got to wait on a lower high and mark this one green. And you see it would have worked, but it's just barely. There's 6 ticks in there, so it's just enough to get your scalp. And then it doesn't make anything other than that. So I think you have to mark that green as well. It ends up running up and making a couple of more legs up, but this is just congestion. I don't think you can trade that. Notice prices work down with a first entry, second entry, but no entry there. Prices never break above it. The signal bar doesn't qualify anyway. Now here, I did not mark this trade, but you may argue that's a triple test. If you look here, it looks like 1, 2, 3 test, and it does kind of look like 2 legs back. So I didn't mark it because it's going long right back into those highs. I would have liked going short here better if I'd had a good setup. But I'm just not crazy about going long right into those highs. So I didn't mark it, and it's getting close to going into the FOMC meeting. Minutes coming out at 1 o'clock. So I think you're better off just to sit tight. And unfortunately, there's a nice second entry there right before 1 o'clock, or maybe right at 1 o'clock. Yeah, just prior to 1 o'clock. So I think it's too early to enter yet. Now on FOMC meeting minutes, they're not quite the same as the FOMC rate announcement. So you can get some volatility, and you did get some here, but I think within 15 or 20 minutes, if things look like they've returned to normal, you can come back to trading again. So, but I think you have to skip that one because it's not even 1 o'clock yet, so the news hadn't come out till the next bar. But it runs up pretty quickly, and then you're working down. Close outside, tries to make a new low, tries multiple times, and next thing you know, we're going higher again. This is all just sideways. I don't see anything I like going short or long, but notice it bouncing off the key entry point, the trend line. It takes off, and then it works back. You get a first entry and a second entry right at the key entry point, and you do get a close outside and a new low all in one bar, again, right at the key entry point. I like going long there, and you can see it's a nice move up. And then again, another two-legged swing back into the 3 o'clock hour, and then you're just chopping sideways after that. So that pretty much did it. So yeah, not a great trading day. There's a few trades here. Nothing to get really excited about. Probably the best setup of the day was here, and you couldn't take a trade because it was into the news. So, and that's the smart move. So don't try to trade that high volatility news. If it's a FOMC speaker or whatever, I usually don't worry too much about them. I'm a little more lax with it on the meeting minutes because unless they, even if they put the minutes out, people need time to digest them and stuff. So unless there's some headline on it that really spooks the market or excites the market, you're not going to see a lot of quick instant move. You got a little bit here, and it continued on into the close, but um, who knows what created that? There could have been something in those meeting notes, and maybe it wasn't. But anyway, just still be careful with them, watch them, be aware of them. But you can trade pretty, if the price action settle back down in 15 or 20 minutes, you can trade it in 15 or 20 minutes. Just wait for the price action to settle back down. And for the most part, generally you don't get a lot of movement out of that type of news. So doesn't mean you can't, because nothing's ever written in stone, but generally you don't. And so there it is. Fairly decent trading day, just not a lot of trades. They were pretty much all longs. There was a short up here. Most of it was all long. So it looks like more like a range day than it does a trend, although you do get attempt at 2 legs up. You don't quite make it either. So, but I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.